Magandang araw sa lahat. Today we will talk about advocacy o advokasya sa Tagalog. Importante itong paksang ito para sa mga organisasyon na nagsusulong ng pagbabago, yung mga pagbabago na maliit man o malaki, sa loob man o sa labas ng organisasyon. Malaki kung ang nature ng organisasyon, lalo na halimbawa ay pagsusulong ng pagbabago sa lipunan. Ibig sabihin ito, yung pursuit nila for social change will require advocacy to tackle in as many aspects of the society itself or as many issues or systems as possible. Maliit kung halimbawa ang pagbabagong isinusulong ay simpleng policy change o pagbabago sa mga polisiyang panloob. Still, of course, you would need the support of your constituents para maayos at epektibong maipatupad ang mga pagbabagong ito sa loob ng organisasyon. So ito po si Darius Guerrero and we will talk about advocacy as it applies to many organizations that we are into. Magandang araw po ulit sa inyo lahat. So gaya ng aking pong sinabi, we will talk about advocacy. Ako po si Darius M. Guerrero. Ako po ay isang accredited volunteer arbitrator and maritime volunteer arbitrator. Ibig sabihin sea-based at land-based ng National Conciliation and Mediation Board. Ito po ay naka-attached na agency sa Department of Labor and Employment. So when we talk about advocacy, we see its context even in processes as voluntary arbitration. Particular po ito para sa mga manggagawa na may union at mga manggagawa na pumapalaot sa karagatan. We also would like to look at advocacy in the context of representation, particularly by a sector to multi-partite or tripartite bodies as part of participation in governance. Ayan po yung aking ilan sa mga representation as member of the Regional Tripartite Wage and Productivity Board, as chairperson of the Regional Development Council Development Administration Committee, at member ng Tripartite Executive Committee ng Department of Labor and Employment. Yung Tripartite Executive Committee, dito gamit natin yung ilang advocacy skills na ating natutunan dahil ito ho yung gumagawa ng mga polisiya na may patungkol sa pagsasaayos ng sistema ng paggawa. So kung may narinig kayo na isang mga department orders ng Department of Labor and Employment na nilalabas, karamitan po dito ay dumadaan sa Tripartite Executive Committee bago pa man aprobahan ng Tripartite Industrial Peace Council. Tripartite kasi kasama po dito ang employer, kasama dito ang employee, pati ang government. First, I'm also part of JICA as an expert on competency development program, particularly po ito do sa development program on education for Japanese companies. At kasalukuyan ay HR and labor consultant, labor relation consultant, at naggumawa o bumuo ng ilang mga manual. Sumulat ng ilang mga manual, particular para sa mga empleyado o sa mga manggagawa. So, we will tackle advocacy. So, let's look at advocacy in the context of ano yung kalimitan kanya mga approaches. One is in terms of education. Yung approaches, ito ho yung mahabang proseso ng advocacy that you would need to educate people. You would need to ensure that they would understand all aspects and all implications of whatever advocacy issues that you are pursuing, and that the citizenry or the constituents are aware of such advocacy effort. Two, after awareness or continuing awareness, we mobilize people. We equip them with the skills. We motivate them we mobilize them towards certain direction, towards certain goals. So kung alam nila yung issues na ina-advocate nila, aware sila dito, then it may be right already to pursue them, to allow them to be equipped with the skills and the knowledge and motivate them towards certain goal, towards certain direction. So you're talking of policy change, for example. You're talking about yung kalimitan hong sinusulong ng the last time what we did with the issue of the migrant workers is to pursue the creation of the Department of Migrant Workers, a particular department para sa mga ating mga kababayan na nagtatrabaho sa ibang bansa. So what we did then ay siguraduhin na yung mga organizations ng migrant workers, yung mga NGOs, yung mga migrant workers themselves are aware of what's happening, are aware of an implication of the implications of creating the Department of Migrant Workers. Ibig sabihin po nito, yung hiwa-hiwalay na ahensya ng gobyerno, yung POEA, yung OWA, at iba pang ahensya, ay ma-link up, magkaroon ng isang coordinating body on top of it all that would ensure that yung mga kapakanan at karapatan ng ating mga OFWs are addressed. So when we had continuing education, we pursued awareness on the issue, then we started mobilizing the organization of migrant workers. Kasama po tayo dyan sa mga hearings, committee hearings sa parehong kamera ng ating kamara ng ating Kongreso sa House of Representatives at doon sa Senate. So we pursued policy change. Now, meron na po tayong Department of Migrant Workers. Hindi po tayo tumigil doon. We are now in the process of implementation ng mga polisiya na nasa loob nito. And we are monitoring that even after the law was passed. We were vigilant enough to ensure that the implementing rules and regulations will be in place which are consistent with the intentions of the law. So yun po yung apat na approaches as I made an example based on what we have experienced sa Department of Migrant Workers. Malinaw po ang partisipasyon dyan ng ilan sa ating mga NGOs, and most of them are still actively pursuing, ensuring that their intent of the law and the objectives of creating the migrant workers department is consistent with their advocacies. So ano po ba when we talk of advocacy? We're talking about advocacy reforms. It's about reforms. It's about change. You want to advance reforms or change practices sa pamamagitan ng pagmobilisa, pagpapagalaw, pagpapakilos ng mamamayan dahil yung reforms or change practices that you are pursuing would entail hindi lamang isang maliit na organisasyon. It will entail the government, the whole of society, and even systems. You talk about systems, political, economic, social, cultural. So when you advance reforms, you tackle all these things. And that would mean pursuing changes as an advocacy. It's one of is the definition of advocacy. So this is an individual or group activity which aims to influence decisions within political, economic, or social systems and institutions. It's also a way of building relationships, particularly if you have organizations, mass-based organizations from the ground, kailangan mo siya mag-build ng relationships up to the level kung saan nandoon yung mga taong gumagawa ng mga desisyon. It helps people to speak up and get involved. Participation. This is one way of ensuring that the masses take part or are participating in the processes of governance. So through advocacy, we enlighten people, we help build their confidence, and we allow them to speak up and get involved with decisions that are being made for them most of the time. So instead of just being subjects of decisions, we want them to take part and be active in the pursuit for change. We also look at advocacies in terms of sino ba yung nagpupursue ng mga advocacies na to. We call them advocates. Advocates. These are the people who would most of the times help us make choices, to help us express our views, our preferences and choices. It is based on the belief that people themselves are the best persons to make decisions about your life. So when we talk of, for example, when we talk of paano ba uunlad ang mahirap? Paano gaganda ang buhay ng ating mga vulnerable sectors sa ating lipunan? Will you ask the mayaman, the graduates of certain prestigious schools, or yung matataas na tao sa pamahalaan kung paano uunlad ang mahirap? Our advocates would tell us, no, the best person to talk about improvements in the lives of the people who are poor are the poor themselves. Alam nila kung ano kailangan nila, alam nila paano nila may susulong yung pag-unlad ng kanilang kabuhayan kung mabibigyan lamang sila ng tamang pagkakataon na ma-empower at ma-express yung kanilang mga sarili. So, yun ang sinasabi ng ang paniniwala ng maraming mga advocates. You help people make their choices. You help people make their preferences because the people themselves are the best persons to make decisions about their lives. So ito po yung ginagawa, walk to ng ating mga advocates for empowering our people. So ano po yung kalimitang daan o pamamaraan when we talk of advocacy campaigns? Ang sinasabi po natin dito, pag meron kang paniniwala, lalo na ko ito something that will affect whole of society, we have to determine how do you mobilize, how do you transform public will into political power. Yung paniniwala, yung ng nakakarami ng mamamayan, paano mo ito ma-harness, mapalakas, at ma-convert sa political power. So we start with research on the proven policy solution. We want to know the implications of our advocacy. We want to know to where our advocacies would lead us. So importante when you talk about certain issues, for example, when you think importante na mawala na lahat ng empleyado, for example, dumadaan lamang sa probationary to regular employees, gaya dati, na ang kalimitan sa mga manggagawa become regular employees. At pagpasok nila sa kumpanya when they are young, they will end up at the end of the time retiring at the age of 60 or 65 with full benefits for retirement. Hindi yung gaya ng nangyayari ngayon na ang mga empleyado, particularly yung mga young workers, get to work in a company 5 months. After 5 months, mawawalan ng trabaho ng 6 na buwan ng 1 taon. Then makakatrabaho ulit 5 months. Ganun ulit. After ilang months, nawalan ng trabaho, then makakatrabaho ulit sa loob ng 5 months. Hindi na mamalaya na kung nagsimula siya magtrabaho ng 18, pagdating niya ng 28 anyos na hindi siya regular na empleyado, mahihirapan na siya maghanap ng trabaho ulit. Kasi 5 months lang yung kalimitan na open na trabaho para sa mga manggagawa. So, if we want to change that system, what do? You start with the research. Ano na ba ang extent ng kontraktualisasyon sa Pilipinas? Ano na ba ang extent ng pag-create ng mga agencies na siyang sumasalo ng empleyado para lamang ipasok sa mga kumpanya? So you start with that, the research ng issues o ng concerns na gusto mong magkaroon ng advocacy campaign. So you sometimes have to look at the issue in terms of ano ba ang papel ng mamamayan dito? Ano ba ang pulso ng mamamayan dito? Tanggap ba nila ang sitwasyon na to? Sila ba ay apektado ng sitwasyon na to? So you have to look at it in the perspective of the citizenry na will they be supporting your campaign? Will they be supporting your advocacy to such an extent that it become a political issue? Nung panahon ng presidential election, sa panahon ni Digong, nung bago ma-elect si Digong, kung mapapansin natin, matingkad na matingkad po yung issue, research and advocacy and education awareness ng mga organisasyon, particularly labor groups, sa issue ng kontraktualisasyon. What happened is that yung issue na yon ay nabitbit hanggang sa eleksyon. And people are asking the candidates, ano ba ang posisyon ninyo sa issue ng contractualization? Of course, the rest is history. We don't talk about, we need not talk about kung tumupad ba o hindi ang ating mahal na Pangulo sa posisyon na to. But what I'm saying is, if you have an effective advocacy campaign, you start with the research, you start with getting the pulse of the citizenry. And thirdly, you need to invite as many people to work with you, to coalesce with you towards advancing yung ating advocacy. So we need to create groups. We need to involve as many organizations as possible. Those important organizations na kaparehong concern itong issue na ating isinusulong. So this is part of not only the advocacy campaign, but also communicating the advocacy issues na pinupursue natin. So we start with research, we see the pulse of the citizenry, and then we start building the coalition. Then we get the media. The media will allow us wide mileage of support on the issues that we are pursuing. For example, on the issue of the contractualization, on the issue of concerns on the rights and the welfare of the migrant workers, yan, laging binibitbit po ng media yung mga issues na yan because it creates interest among their viewers or among their tagapakinig, yung kanilang mga listeners. And it builds momentum into creating public support and supporters doon sa particular na issue. Pansinin niyo yan. For example, when you talk of advocating for the rights and welfare of migrant workers, you would see media highlighting one particular issue. So pag pinag-usapan natin halimbawa ngayon ang ang rights and welfare of migrant workers, anong una nating naiisip for the older ones? We think of floor contemplation, for example. We still remember the name. We still remember what happened to her. Nagkapelikula pa nga dun sa issue na yan. Pero ano yung nagbitbit nun? Because it allowed a coalition, a momentum between the organizations advocating for government engagement, government intervention on the issue of migrant workers. Nagkaroon ng momentum ng kolaborasyon ng organizations and other sectors plus the media mileage. So it allowed everybody to know what has happened to floor contemplation sa ibang bansa at nalaman dito sa Pilipinas at sa iba't ibang mga lugar sa buong mundo. So there was an hype on the concerns for the migrant workers. So ito din po yung ilan sa mga bagay na nagsulong ng mga pagbabago ng mga polisiya at naka-enlighten even in the way we are doing managing issues and concerns of the migrant workers at the local and global levels. So naging polisiya ito na nakaapekto ng malaki sa ating mga kababayan nagtatrabaho sa ibang bansa. So it has become not only a media mileage, na-sustain po ito to the point that it has become an election issue. We wanted government to take part, to take responsibility for our migrant workers. And it has become an election issue, gaya ng contractualization, as I made an example kanina. And as such, many of the initiatives would lead to legislation, would lead to changes in policies and laws, would lead to changes in the way we are doing our governance, the way we govern. So the direction should be to effect the necessary policy and legislation changes. So we get the support of the legislators, yung ating mga congressman, yung ating mga senador. So ano ba yung mga tips? Ano ba yung mga guidelines when we pursue advocacy? We start with crafting your message. Ayaw ng mga mamamayan, ayaw ng citizenry, ayaw ng mga pangkaraniwan nating tao ng masyadong mahaba at masyadong komplikadong mga messages. Kaya it would be more powerful, it would be more effective kung naiintindihan nila sa isang maiksi o sa konting mga salita lang. Halimbawa, when we were advocating for pagtigil ng contractualisasyon, we only say ENDO. Tigilan ng ENDO. Ano yung ENDO? So people will get interested. Ano yung ENDO? So end of contract. So ENDO. So ganun lang. O tigilan ng contractualisasyon o tigilan ng ENDO. The two words which is already very powerful to send the message to the public, to make them understand. Gaya ho yan ng mga ng mga ginagawa ng mga kumpanya. For example, kung naalala ko, before, I don't know kung yan pa din ang bit ng PLDT, simple lang, touching lives. Or yung bangko, we have this bank before na ang sinasabi niya subok na matatag, subok na matibay. So yung ganun ka powerful yung message niya, though Of course, we know that nagsara yung bangko na yun, so hindi siya matatag. Ano pa ba? Madami ho yung mga kumpanya which creates this branding, creates this message na yun yung gusto nilang iparating sa mamamayan in just a few words. So it's important that you're able to craft your message effectively para madaling maintindihan, madaling maalala ng mga tao. Just like kung sino nagpauso ng Marites o ng Marisol, who would have thought na pag nagbiro ka ng ganun ay madadala hanggang sa madaming tao at may intindihan nila when you just say Marites. Ayun pala, mare, anong latest? So, very creative people are able to send the message using just a few words or few phrases. And this is very necessary when we pursue advocacy. So, next important thing for us when we do advocacy is to develop the plan. Ano ba yung advocacy plan mo? Pero when you develop the advocacy plan, hindi ka simpleng umuupo sa lamesa at tumitingala sa kisame at gumagawa ng plano. You don't do that. When you do advocacy planning, you engage, you involve as many important people as possible, yung makakatulong sa'yo doon sa pag-pursue ng advocacy mo. So you identify as many influencers as possible para umupo at mag-usap to define ano ba yung direction, ano ba yung latag ng ating mga pagkilos patungo sa pagtatamo ng ating ninanais. Okay. So we take note also sa panahon ngayon, very effective ang social media. In fact, you don't even know alin na nga ang totoo sa hindi sa dami ng lumalabas ng mga information sa social media, and some of them are information either very biased or created to the point na yung iba ay fake news. Pero normally it helps in your advocacy. Pag nakakita ka ng ilang mga, for example, if you talk about certain issues of the day and you can see bloggers talking about it, one or two bloggers talking about it, then you have Facebook pinapakita yung mga ganong information, then it reaches the consciousness of the citizenry and creates public opinion. So yun yung kalakasan ng social media bilang tool for advocacy. So next is that you leave behind document. You know the summary of your advocacy. So kailangan malinaw, and it's part of the crafting message na objective. Kailangan malinaw yung ito ang ating gustong isulong na pagbabago para sa mga concerned. Ito ang gusto nating marating. Ito ang options. Ito yung mga options na pwede nating i-take. Ito yung mga possible directions or results of the different options that we will be taking. Let's be very clear about that when we do at least anticipate. It's important for us to anticipate, and part of research, part of understanding our advocacy issues and defining how that it will impact as we go to the campaign plan. Next, we understand yung purpose ng ating pakikipag-dialogo, yung purpose ng ating pakikipag-usap, because we have to be very clear about the purpose of our advocacy. For example, you say, tigilan ng kontaktualisasyon. Very strong message. But people will ask. Some concerned or some stakeholders will ask, paano yun? Mawalan trabaho ng iba. maraming mawawalan ng trabaho. So you have to be very clear about anticipating all these questions. And when you have your meetings, to providing providing clear alternatives as to what you are pursuing. Bahagi ho yan ng summarization natin ng advocacy. Next would be to additional guidelines. Huwag natin, sabi ko kanina, let's be very simple, very powerful but short, brief, concise messages. So hindi kailangan isang buong sentence yung ating mensahe na madaming mga salita. Hindi lang ho yun ganun. Hindi lang simple, but as much as possible, we talk about advocacy. Isang issue, isang panahon, isang plano. You don't create as many, for example, you talk about karapatan ng migrant workers, tapos samahan mo ng issue ng kaligtasan, occupational safety and health na manggagawa sa private employees, then you talk about wage. In one advocacy campaign, you have 3 issues. Hindi po yan advisable. We do as much as possible one particular priority for one advocacy campaign. When we had the experience of advocating for an extended maternity leave, we only focused on maternity leave, and we mobilized as many women organizations as possible. Binitbit po yan sa loob ng Kongreso and allowed them to talk about their concerns. But for only one particular issue, expanded maternity leave. So you also have to look at understanding how this will benefit people, stakeholders. You'll only be able to engage them, involve them, if it will have certain benefits for them, for the government, for the organizations. Kung nagbago yung mga policies na yan, ano yung benepisyo niyan para sa mamamayan? No, I was talking about the expanded maternity leave. So malinaw ang benepisyo nito para sa mga mamamayan, particularly sa mga women workers. But then the employers are asking, paano naman ang implikasyon nito sa aming kumpanya? Paano naman ang implikasyon nito sa productivity at competitiveness ng business? So as much as possible, if you want to get their support, you'll have to define it. Of course, we were able to define it dun sa mga legislators. Kasi alam natin, it will be a very good election issue. Alam natin na pag sinabing sinuportahan yung expanded maternity leave, many women workers would get to like or support the particular politician. So yun din, of course, importante that we find as many benefits of the advocacies that we are pursuing for the many stakeholders nung ating pinupursue. So we get to veto, not veto as in VETO, but to sino ba yung magdedesisyon? In a particular advocacy, sino ba magdedesisyon? If it's societal changes that we are pursuing, particular legislations, for example, sino magdedesisyon? Magdedesisyon yan yung mga congressman. So you need the support of the particular committee na mag-champion ng iyong concern. yung head ng committee na yon. And of course, you would need the support of the Speaker of the House as much as possible. Pagdating sa Senado, yung particular chairman ng Senate committee concerned, and you would need the support of one or two more senators, then you would need the support of the Senate President. Kasi mag-uusap din yung dalawa, yung House of Representatives, then yung Senador, yung Senate, to paplantsahin yung dalawang versions ng law. Then you would need the support of the President because the President will sign the law. So these are the important people. These are very important top officers that will pursue, that will allow you to conclude whatever advocacy changes that you are pursuing if it's legislation. Okay. Sa isang maliit na advocacy, for example, sa loob lang ng kumpanya, gusto mong mabago ang polisiya sa leads, who would be your veto? Who would be your very important top officer? It may be your president, the president of the company, or the chairman of the board to support your changes in the implementation of the leads if you are the HR. So ito ho yung points, ilan sa mga points na kailangan natin tinitingnan. So focus, don't get distracted. Don't let frustration deter progress and set milestones. So syempre, sa madami pong pagkakataon, ang daming advocacy campaigns na hindi naman natatapos ng isang upuan. If it's legislation, it would take you years before ma-achieve mo ang isang milestone pa nga. Hindi pa nga marating yung gusto mong ultimately. I was talking, one of the examples I'm making ay yung issue ng contractualization. Binitbit sa election, successfully. We were able to make it an election issue. Ang kasunod na tanong ay implementasyon. Or, I mean, pursuing the change as they were promised by the politicians. So we need to focus after election. What do we do? Ang dami-dami natin kailangan gawin. Nagkaroon ng mga sunog and mga kumpanya na nasunog, mga manggagawa na natanggal sa trabaho. Then we get back to our campaign. Issue ng contractualization. There are too many distractions unless we pursue another campaign, advocacy campaign. Pero pag dalawa, sabi ko nga kanina, you only focus on one as much as possible. Pag may dalawa o tatlong issues ka na nabitbit, hindi ka na ganun ka-effective kasi na kumakalat yung iyong efforts, kumakalat yung iyong initiative at hindi na nagiging malinaw yung iyong plano. So just like, so we get distractions, we also get frustrated. We were thinking, oh, we elected President Duterte and he promised to end contractualization. At nung ilang mga sunod na pronouncements siya after getting elected, oh, bakit ganun? Then finally, he did not sign the proposed bill. He did not sign the proposed law that would somehow address the issue of contractualization. So all stakeholders, many of the workers' organizations got frustrated. They even deplored the president for not signing the proposed law. Pero after that, tuloy pa din. We continue. We focus. We start campaigning again. We start developing new campaign strategies. We start building new coalitions so that we could pursue still the issue of ensuring security of tenure. Nagkaroon ng ano dyan yung sabi ko kanina, focus, na water down ng kaunti yung campaign. Because one aspect is ending contractualization, stop endo. Then another aspect is ensuring security of tenure. Related yun, pero magkaiba ho yun. So somehow, nag-shift yung ilang mga legislators, yung mga congressman, doon sa issue of security of tenure para medyo ma-pacify at medyo hindi masyadong radikal ang dating. Pag ang tinukoy mo ay stop contractualization. So doon nag-focus sa ensuring security of tenure. So nangyayari po yan, you get distracted, you sometimes muddle the issue, then kaya mo siyang ibalik doon sa ano ba talaga yung gusto mo. So importante talaga na meron kang malinaw na plano at kaya mo milestones. Panalo natin to. Kaunti, hindi pa. Kasunod, anong gagawin natin? Okay? Yung pag-shift na yon, pagka-model ng issue, isa sa issue doon is yung communication. There will be times that your communication strategy need to be very purposeful, kailangan very definite kasi even yung public madidistract eh. Even yung public will have different views of particular things. So kahit na malapit yun sa issue, but security of tenure, for example, as I've given the example earlier, is different from stopping contractualization. Kasi yung security of tenure, madami pang aspects yun eh. It's not only about contractual workers. It's about probationary employees. It's about project employees. It's about seasonal workers. So those are part of the targets of security of tenure. Hindi lang yung seasonal, hindi lang yung contractual workers. So confuse. And that's what many politicians did on the issue of the contractualization. So lobbying steps. We do lobby. We have to talk to our congressmen. We have to talk to our senators. So ilang tips dyan is to make an appointment. Be very clear about the agenda. If you have the alternative bill or you have the bill to support or you are supporting the bill of the particular legislator, be very clear about that. So you define you plan your meeting. Ano yung goal mo? Goal mo ba is sa una lang ay magpakilala or kung kilala na kayo is to get the support. So you have to plan. Ano ba yung iyong goal? Sino-sino ang gagawa nito, etc. So you have to do your complete staff work. Ano yung mga facts, ano yung mga materials. Pag sinabi mong concerns ng migrant workers, dapat alam mo, ilan yung migrant workers na maalis sa bansa every day? Ilan yung migrant workers na nasa particular country? Ilan yung cases recorded ng abuse or etc. So you have to have your facts. You have to do your research when you do lobbying steps to your senators or your congressmen. So get there early. Never be late. Okay lang yun. Maghintay ka. You have your concerns. So, pero you lose the chance sometimes if you get there late. Normally, you lose the chance. So you also create a not so good impression to whoever you're discussing it with. So you get to introduce during the meeting. You get to introduce the persons joining you at kung bakit sila nandun o ba't importante silang nandun. Of course, when you start discussing ang mga tips lang naman diyan, you stay focused. You deliver, you be consistent with your plan, meeting plan, and try to achieve them based on your planning, based on your goal. So stay focused, very very direct. When you say, for example, uh, matutulungan po ang maraming tao ng proposal na to. Sa halip na ganun, sabihin mo, ilan? Ilan yung matutulungan? At paano matutulungan? So be very specific as to the implications of what you are lobbying for. So kaya nga, I'm telling you earlier, importante that you do your research. And then after discussing these things, you try to draw out the position of the congressman or the senator. At kung tingin mo ay hindi pa sila konbinsido, tanungin, what will convince them? So, because at the end of the day, you're lobbying, ang gusto mong mangyari dito ay suportahan nila kung ano man yung bill or law that you are pursuing. Bill, actually. So, after the meeting, you report to your constituents. You do the after the meeting. When you say you debrief, you somehow summarize it with those who are with you during the meeting. We clarify the notes. Ano bang sinabi ni Congressman? Ano nga ang ganito? Ano nga ang pangako niya? Ano nga ang kailangan niya? So other than thanking the congressman or the congressperson or the senator after the meeting, it may be good to send him or her a thank you note for the support for the meeting, and so that he or she would be reminded of the commitments made during the meeting when you were lobbying. So of course you have to report to your constituents. If you are an organization, it would be good because people will be anticipating if they know that you talked with the congressman or the senator. They would be anticipating some results. Many people will not know yung processes ng lobbying. Pero they would want ano ba nangyari? How was it umuo ba? So importante that they get to be updated of the processes of the advocacy campaign, including the lobbying steps. So basically, that's how we do campaigns. That's how we do advocacy. Importante that you have your advocacy issues, you define it, and you start communicating it. Part of the processes is to educate, create awareness so that you'll have a public opinion. And then let's start planning for the campaign and implementing the campaign plan itself. So I hope you did understand what I was trying to share with you, and that this will be helpful in the further pursuits of the objectives and the goals of your organization. Thank you very much.